Reimagining Success, episode 363. And this one is for you. If you love the idea of working less, maybe you listened to last week's episode on the 4-hour day, or even you aspire to Tim Ferriss's 4-hour week. But when you look at your offers, your delivery, your pricing, it just feels completely impossible. Maybe your calendar's maxed out, you're juggling too many custom projects, or you've hit an income plateau that just doesn't reflect where it is you want to be. If your business still feels fragile, dependent on your time, or out of alignment with what you really want, then this episode is for you. Welcome to Reimagining Success, the podcast that helps you build a profitable business as an independent expert, one that works for you and your lifestyle. I'm your host, Anna Lundberg, former corporate insider turned business mentor, executive coach, and mum of 2. Whether you're a solopreneur, a coach, speaker, consultant, I'm here to guide you in creating a business that gives you freedom, flexibility, and the fulfillment you're looking for. Ready to redefine success and build a business that you love? Let's get started. Okay, so last week I introduced this idea of the 4-hour day, and I like the evolution of my thinking here from having kind of demonized, let's be honest, the 9 to 5 to some extent, and really going, okay, but if not this, then what are we working towards, right? It's easy to say, okay, we don't want the factory 40 plus hour week, so what do we want instead? And so let's see if we can create this 4-hour day as a kind of movement, as something to work towards as solopreneurs and experts and founders, okay? Now, why are we not there now? Why do expert businesses hit a wall? And this is something I've seen with so many brilliant solopreneurs that I've worked with, that I haven't worked with. And we start with this momentum. And initially, we're getting clients. And of course, there's this phase of saying yes to lots of things because we don't know what's going to work. And we get momentum and so on. But then we hit a wall. And it's not because we're doing anything wrong, but the business model hasn't been designed. It just kind of happens. So a few common traps, and I've talked about a few of these before, the Frankenstein business. This is one that I think isn't talked about enough, but it's kind of cobbled together from free advice, online courses, what you've seen others do, and just being really reactive to sort of where things are coming, right? So you just, oh yeah, they've asked me for this, I'll do this. They've asked for coaching on that, sure, no problem. I've run a workshop over here, I've designed a program there, and it kind of works. It's kind of bringing in the income you want, but it's very complicated. Alex Merry, and he won't mind me sharing this because he's shared it publicly, had, I think it was 12 offers. So Alex Merry is the founder of Mic Drop. I've had a lot of his community on here. So it's a speaking group, which I highly recommend. So chat with me about that. However, he talked about having created these 12 different offers, and he's really stripped that back and chosen to focus on Mic Drop. And he has a couple of other things, but really very much anchored in his brilliance, really, his zone of genius. And together with his wife, Livy, they're creating something really fantastic. But they can only do that because they've stripped back from those 12 offers that somehow had been created. And let's be honest, if we look at the big players, I think of quite a few of the big names, they might have 12 offers, but what do they have? They have entire teams of social media and videographers and assistants and associates and all sorts, right? That's not the case for those of us starting out, and it may never be the case. So that's the first trap, the Frankenstein business. The second one is over-delivering, the over-delivery spiral. So we're starting a bit tentatively, so we're charging a bit too little, we're not quite confident enough, we're customizing too much, because even though we haven't charged very much, we want to make sure that they're really impressed with what we do, and then we constantly tweak. So I've done this, and I still do it, and I'm working on it myself, so full transparency here. I'll create a whole off-site, I'll create a whole training, and I'll do it from scratch, even though I have lots of existing things. And then for the next one, I'll start again, because each training is slightly different and there's a different audience, and even worse, perhaps, you're doing completely different things, reinventing the wheel every time. And for those of us who are kind of multi-passionate, just throwing that in there, we like variety, right? So we don't want to do the same thing again and again. But if we get into this over-delivery spiral of tweaking, doing everything bespoke and unfortunately charging too little. Let's be honest. I always say, if someone wants to pay me 500k for a bespoke project, no problemo, baby. I'm happy to do that for you. But generally we fall into this spiral of charging too little and, over delivering. So over delivering and not getting the reward that we should. Feast or famine cycle, don't need to explain that one to you, but really it's this kind of lack of a consistent revenue rhythm. We're chasing projects. One day we've got 10k coming in, 15k. The next month we've got nothing. Dependent on big launches, we're busy with a client, and then we forget we need to also do business development. So when that contract ends, we have nothing lined up. There's no pipeline. So really this roller coaster, which is a bit of a cliche, but unfortunately quite common. And then the time for money trap. And this is an interesting one, because as a solopreneur expert, to some extent, we are selling our time for money, but it's still looking at, making the model work so it's not just depending on you showing up, doing the work, solving the problem necessarily. And this is something we'll talk about. So the thing about these traps, these models, Frankenstein, over delivery, feast or famine, time for money, is that they're really reactive, not intentional. So yes, they might generate income, but they're not creating the freedom that is the main reason why we started the business in the first place. Okay, so what is it that gets in the way? Well, you might have a sense of this, but perhaps you haven't dared to voice it or haven't quite fully been able to articulate what's going on. But there's a big one around, when we talk about choosing a niche and being specific, there's this fear of narrowing down. What if I miss out on work? Oh my gosh, I can't possibly say that I do this, because then what if they want something else and then I can't do that? So that's a huge one, fear of narrowing down. Another one is confusion and lack of confidence over pricing. Oh, can I really charge that? But no one else is charging that. Am I good enough? There's a lot there, actually. It's not just lack of clarity on pricing. It's not just a pricing issue. Emotional attachment to responsiveness and the identity. I should reply straight away, so I'm available, so I'm showing that I'm a really reliable person, and they'll give me more work. And to be honest, lack of clarity. I don't really know what I'm building here. I'm just kind of fumbling my way through the dark. And more deeply, I suppose, a lot of us are still operating from some probably unconscious, although some also very explicit rules that we inherited in corporate. This idea, the sort of presenteeism, that if we're available, we're very valuable. If we're busy, we're very important. And at work, in the office, in a corporate job, we're getting paid basically regardless. So it's a very different model to when our price is directly tied to how much we're earning, when the quality of our work is very much tied to us as a personal brand, as an individual, right? It's much more personal. So there's a lot of things going on underneath: FOMO of missing out, wondering if we're charging too much, feeling like we need to be available and replying and so on, and not really knowing what we're trying to build in the first place, that can get in the way. So my approach, and I've talked about this before, but I'm aware that I need to say things 100 times for it to land, so I'd happily say this again and again. I have 3 pillars now. I've talked about the 5 pillars in the past, but I've narrowed it down to 3 pillars, essentially, which are having an intentional business model, number 1, and that's the focus of today. Number 2, authentic marketing and sales. I'm calling it natural, feels good to you, fits in your energies and lifestyle and so on. And finally, simple systems and processes. So not lots of fancy software and so on, but processes and systems that support you. So 3 pillars, 3 sides to that triangle. You need an intentional business model, authentic marketing and sales, and simple systems and processes. And that's what we're working on in the accelerator now. And those are the 3 dimensions. Okay, so intentional business. I have an intentional business blueprint that I take my clients through. So it's super, super tangible. It's like a 1-page business plan. But I want to walk you through the key components that you want to be thinking about. And to be perfectly transparent here, let me tell you who this is not for. It's not for VC-backed tech startups. It's not for teams of 50. This is expert solopreneurs, maybe with a small support team, earning up to, I'd say, multiple 6 figures. There's a ceiling, certainly, that I believe, but that's perhaps my own limitation. And for people wanting to work fewer hours without sacrificing depth or value. So I'm not talking about people who want to just sit on the beach sipping margaritas. So apologies if that's you. See ya. No, that's an important part of life, but it's also for us doing valuable work that's fulfilling, rewarding, that makes a difference. Okay. So that's who this is for. So key components to walk through. The first one has to be, and this is the top part of the business blueprint, a clear vision of success. And that is big picture, I want to feel this way, it looks this way. For me, actually, my definition of success is pretty simple. It's being present wherever I am. So when I'm with you here talking or with clients or presenting, I want to be fully present, engaged, and passionate about what I'm talking about and the work I'm delivering, and financially rewarded for that. Now, okay, podcast, you're not paying me, sadly, but hopefully I'll get a few clients from this, right? So, and nonetheless, it's rewarding. I'm here. I don't have the kids banging on the door because they're at school, and this is good for me. On the other side, if I'm, during the summer holidays or the weekends or evenings, I'm with the kids or with my partner or doing something else that's hopefully fun in my life, then I'm fully there as well, and not going, oh, I really wish I should be working on that. So I should be answering the email, whatever it is. So that's my definition of success. But what's your definition? And there's the big picture, subjective image, vision of what that looks and feels like. But there's also, then we look at really tangible numbers. What are your minimum income goals? And that sounds like a low bar, but that might be replacing your salary from your full-time job. It might be covering your costs, or it might be a higher bar, but there is sort of a minimum income. And to be honest, there is also a ceiling, I would suggest, because if you don't put that ceiling, there will always be more. I spent some time with a friend this summer who told me her partner is just sort of addicted to that game. How much more money can I make? And that's great. And that sounds fantastic. And they have a lovely house and so on. But are you then choosing to do that over the other things and people that matter in your life? Is that so much more important? The incremental gains from making even more hundreds of thousands of pounds or millions or billions, wherever your ceiling is, or actually have you sort of, I've scratched that itch, I've shown that I can make my however many figures, and now that's not the thing. And for most people I work with, maybe we're holding ourselves back. We're not talking about making millions. And this perhaps is the first stage. It may be that once you've made your 100K, 250K, whatever it is, you go, actually, now I'd like to make more. Fine. But it's not, certainly if you're simply trying to earn a living, replacing your job, being able to live a comfortable life, taking care of your family, and most importantly, perhaps being able to say no to work that isn't aligned, then we're not talking millions here, right? So that's a lot of money. But what does success look like for you financially? And then the hours you want to work. So, for example, 4 hours a day or 3 days a week, whatever that looks like. And importantly as well, a part of that vision of success is your non-negotiables. So, okay, no calls after 3 p.m. after school pickup, no work on Fridays. I want to have, I was going to say a monthly massage just came into my mind. That probably wouldn't be on my non-negotiables, but it could be. Maybe it should be. But if you don't name what success looks like, if you don't even know what your non-negotiables are, your hours, your income goals, then you'll always be chasing more because you don't know if you've got enough. Maybe if I never check my accounts, I won't know that actually I'm earning 20K a month and that's beyond what I need, but I'm still chasing because I've got to make more money, more money, more money. So being on top of your numbers and knowing how much you want and need is a really important part of this. It's not about the money, and yet it absolutely is about the money. Okay, so your vision of success. Then I want to talk about offers and I want to talk about clients. I don't want to overwhelm you with too much, but if we talk about the offer design, this is really crucial because the offer, the service, the product is where time comes into play, energy, pricing, everything, right? So thinking when you're coming up with offers, don't just go, oh, well, so-and-so does a course or says that you should do courses, or, oh, it's all about the big programs or workshops, or it's got to be one-to-one coaching. No, it's got to be group coaching, all these shoulds, or copying other people's models. Think about how much time and energy does this offer actually take to deliver? Because you might be saying yes to something, let's say with a corporate, a B2B, oh my gosh, they're paying me so much money. But what you're then offering them within that money is way beyond if you actually spread that out over all the time you're going to take and energy and the compromises and being away from family, whatever it is, with travel and so on, the cost will be way higher and it might not be worth it. So how much time and energy does it actually take to deliver? Probably more than you think. Can you deliver this at your best? Or are you always feeling stretched because you've squeezed in too much, right? You're offering too many calls too often and it's getting in the way of other things. Are you pricing in integrity with where you want to be, with the value you're delivering? And I know that's a really tricky thing to put your finger on. Or are you pricing out of fear and thinking, oh gosh, I can't possibly charge more than that. Who am I to? And so on. And one interesting, and I think I've heard people talk about a sort of the savior complex. And it's easy to think, okay, do my clients need me? And you might think, yes, they do. I'm the expert. I need to give them one-to-one and lots of feedback on their model. And I'm the one they're paying to work with and so on. But the truth is, they're super smart, the people I work with. They get a lot of insights themselves. I give them prompts and frameworks and so on. But of course, as we know from coaching, if you've had any experience of that, the best commitment, motivation, buy-in comes from coming to your own conclusions and developing your own ideas that really work for you. That's the whole point, your definition of success. And my favorite moments are in a group call, for example, or the WhatsApp chat, where the members are helping each other. And give sometimes better feedback than I could have done. And that's a bit humbling, but isn't that amazing? So if I think I'm the savior and, oh my gosh, I have to give them 500 hours of one-to-one time with me, or I have to be there and give them all that support, and I have to check everything they do and so on, then that's locking them into this dependency. And unfortunately for you, means you have to be there over delivering all the time. So try to be honest with yourself and think, do they actually need you? And do they actually need you to pack the program full of all this stuff that doesn't exist yet? You have to develop the perfect workbooks and this, that, and the other. Or can you create a model where they're getting what they need, but with a much simpler, more stripped back skeleton, and gives them what they need without all the stuff and all of you? So rather than, thinking, oh, it's all about the hourly coaching and as much of time with you as possible, it's packages, right? Generally in coaching, it's much more powerful and valuable to have an end goal, to have a purpose, to have something you're working towards with, on your side, boundaries, maybe with some exercises in between if you want to, and so on, with prep, but then things for them to do in between the calls and apply what they're learning as well. Rather than just sort of open-ended consulting and just you keep talking, working indefinitely, you have a productized service, you have a really clearly defined scope, you have certain outcomes, and that's going to be completed at a certain date. And rather than maybe totally bespoke, custom projects for everybody, and maybe this takes time, you have experience of what actually this looks like, but you eventually develop a flagship program that has standardized, templated onboarding, certain start dates, finish dates, material you work through, series of workshops that you offer instead of creating a new type of workshop for every single client. Okay, so that's offer design. And then finally, clients. So I'm seeing this is quite a long episode, so I hope it's worth the listen as I go over what I usually do. But it's really important when you think about the clients you're working with. And I have a client checklist. Message me. You can message me, Anna S. E. Lundberg on Instagram, or Anna Lundberg on LinkedIn. You can also email me, let's say podcast@onestepoutside.com. And I can send you this checklist. But it's considering, of course, there's the big picture B2B versus B2C. It's, do they value your expertise? Are they aware of their problem? Are they willing to pay to solve that problem? Do they respect your boundaries, or are they going to expect that you answer them at the drop of a hat every night, every weekend, and so on? Do they pay on time? Do they do the work? Do they trust the process? It's not about just getting more clients, right? It's getting the right clients. And that means, yes, you might say no to some people. Some people might be turned off themselves, but you will deliver so much better value for the right clients. They will rave about you. They'll be happy to pay. You can increase your prices. You'll be happy delivering the work. You'll become known as the expert in this thing, right? Clients will see you more as a strategic partner. you're the expert. So you know what the requirements are. You know the best approach. In my experience, a series of 3 workshops covering these topics is the best approach, because a one-off lunch and learn is not going to make any difference. Or in my experience, with a new client, I'll usually start with a 4-month coaching container and we work on XYZ things. You're the expert guiding them. Don't be too wishy-washy and said, oh, we can do whatever you want, because then hang on, but I'm paying you to to advise me here. So that doesn't work in your favor. Okay, so what's your vision? Big picture as well as the tangibles of practical parameters, hours, fees, non-negotiables. Offer design, and really thinking about what your clients need, but also what it takes for you to deliver. And then speaking of clients, really the right clients who are going to value your expertise, respect your boundaries, and be like the dream clients who pay you without complaining, and they do the work and they get amazing results. So if your current model isn't supporting your vision, it's not your fault. It's just likely that you've built, what you were told would work. You followed some kind of blueprint from someone else. You've hobbled together. What's the word? Cobbled together, I think I'm after. This kind of Frankenstein model. But it's okay. It's no one's fault. And it's amazing that you've even got this far by yourself, right? But it's never too late to recalibrate and go, hang on, stop. This was not the reason why I quit my job, and actually come back and design or redesign something that reflects your actual goals now and who you are now and who you want to be in the next few years, not maybe who you were a few years ago. I started my business 10 years ago. My life looked very different then, 10, 12 years ago. So what's your energy, your priorities now and for the next season of your life? And that's what lets you work fewer hours, earn more, and protect your peace without sacrificing the impact that you want to have. Okay? Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now. If this episode has you thinking that something needs to shift, whether that's streamlining how you work, redesigning your offers, or finally building the business that you actually wanted when you started, let's talk about what's next for you. We can look at where you are, what you want these next few months and years to feel like, and whether one-to-one support or the Business Accelerator would be the best fit. Just book a call at onestepoutside.com/call. It's a simple conversation to explore what would make the biggest difference for you right now. That's onestepoutside.com/call.